Hi, I'm Corey. Welcome to Creating with Scraps. This video is a remake of the folio, the 4x6 folio that I shared in the Junk Journal Tips, Tricks, and Hacks collaboration video. I watched Gail Augustinelli's Scrappy Saturday last night and oh, I laughed. I didn't realize that she did a beautiful job, but I didn't realize that my instructions were not as clear as they could have and should have been. So I'm going to try to do it a little bit more concisely and clearly, because it really is a simple project to make. And basically what it is, it's a 4" by 6" folio that uses one sheet of 12 by 12 paper, and it creates a little booklet. I call it a booklet, and it's got a 2" flap at the top, and when you open it you've got a pocket or a tuck spot on the side, and then the top cover has a pocket, and the inside of the cover has a pocket. Then you've got place for paper, journaling, and then the back inside cover has a pocket and the back outside cover has a pocket. So you've got 5 pockets, and I just held it closed with a tab and a bit of twine and tied it around, tucked it under, and Bob's your uncle. So this is the project, and I will show you, hopefully more clearly this time, how it is constructed. You need one sheet of 12 by 12 cut into 6" sections. So you make one cut vertically and one cut horizontally to give you the 4 sheets. This is for double-sided paper. If you've got single-sided paper, you'll need 2 sheets because you will want to fold it over so that you've created your own double-sided basically. But you can also use 4 sheets of 6 by 6 paper because it's going to get you the same result. So I've got 4 sheets of 6 by 6 here. And you're going to create 2 sections. So I'm going to put the sections are identical. I'm going to put one set of 2 papers to the side so that I don't confuse myself. And I'm going to use 2 pieces of 6 by 6 paper. The first decision you have to make is, what piece do you want showing for your 2" flap? So your 2" flap is what holds the whole book closed, and it's what's on the top. So that piece is on the right side of your paper. If you've got your 2 sheets of 6 by 6 looking at you, it is going to be on the right side because of where we put the fold. And so all I do is I'll look here and see, well, what do I want on that section? And the civics, this report card piece would be really cool, so I could use that. But I'll probably use this piece here simply because I'm a reading specialist, though I'm not working as a reading specialist now. I am one. And I love to read. So I'm going to choose this reading piece. And on your previous video, I said, flip it upside down and score it at 2" because that creates your 2" flap. Well, for the sake of, again, being not confusing, put it exactly as you want it and score it. Put it on your page in front of you the way you want it to read. I'm making sure my print is not upside down on the back. Put it exactly the way you want it and score it at 4". Again, you could certainly turn it upside down and score it at 2". It gives you the same thing. But like I said, for the sake of clarity, put it the way you want it, score it at 4". And that is your front cover, your first piece of your front cover. And then the second piece, you're going to score this one at 3.5". It's laying in front of you, print side up, pattern side up, depending on what you're using. And you're going to score this at 3.5". All right, and you're going to fold that back. Now here is where you're going to make one change before you do anything else. 3.5" side is on your left, your 2.5" side is on your right. Cut about a 1/2 inch off the 3.5" side. Corey, why didn't you just have us make it small initially? Because I wanted you to start with the 6" papers. It just makes more sense. So I want to cut just roughly a 1/2 inch off the 3.5" piece. So I'm going to flip it upside down so I can do that. And it doesn't have to be perfect by any means. It can be 3/4 inch. It can be just shy of a 1/2 inch. But it's going to be about a 1/2 inch off of that section. And you're going to be left with this. So now your paper is 6 by 5.5-ish. All right, instead of 3.5" and 2.5", you now have 3 inches and 2.5 inches. And the reason we're going to do that is because if the if you leave it intact, this piece, which becomes the back piece, makes it hard to get into the pocket. That's the only reason we're trimming that down. And you can use that for a cluster or something later. All right, so that's now the 5.5 inch piece, which is our back piece or our second piece. We're leaving our first piece alone. We've trimmed about 1/2 inch off this. Now we're going to take it, open it up from where we scored it, and we're going to turn it so our score line is horizontal. It's lying across our page. And then because it's a 6-inch piece of paper, and I'm not great at eyeballing it, I am going to mark at 3 inches on the top and 3 inches on the bottom. So paper that was 6 by 6 cut to 5.5 by 6, scored at, well, it was initially the 3.5 inch mark. Now it's the 3 inch mark, turned sideways so that the top and the bottom, the score line runs horizontally, and the top and the bottom are in front of me with a pencil mark for a divot. And the divots don't have to be identical simply because they're not going to be next to each other. Like I said, I'm not good at eyeballing center, so I wanted to mark where that was. And I take the 2 divots. Now I'm going to turn it back to the way it was when I scored it, right? 3 inches on my left, 2.5 inches on my right. And I am going to ink it because it's a lot easier to ink before you glue. And this is unstained. It's a new ink box because I'm checking out a prototype to see if I like it with the Fabri-Tac. I got some new bits to make larger holes and different size holes. And I made a larger hole for the Ramblin' Crafter tool and a larger hole for the Fabri-Tac glue. Excuse me, pardon me. So I'm going to ink those. And now I'm ready to assemble my first section. My top is the 3, which was 3.5. It's been cut down to 3 inches. And the bottom is my 2.5 inch section. I'm going to run glue along the top. So my score line is now vertical again. And I've got divots on the sides. I'm going to run a bead of glue along the top and along the bottom because that's where I'm going to attach it to the first page. That back so you can see. So glue along the top and along the bottom, and I'm going to double check before I glue it together that I don't have anything upside down because I just turned it around. All right, so I take my top piece with the 2 inch fold on there and checking my writing, checking my print to make sure they're correct. My 3 inch section is going to be, I'm going to assemble it just like this basically. I'm going to put these right together. This 4 inch section is going to fit into the score line of my 3 and 2.5 inch sections. And I'm going to put them together just like that and make sure they're straight. And then I'm going to clamp it simply because I put a lot of glue on there. And I've been trying the Bearly Art glue, and that one's kind of a really wet glue. I mean, they're all wet, but all wet glues are wet, but this one seems to be a little more wet than some, which is good because it gives you more wiggle room. So I'm going to put those aside and clamp that. And that is my first section done. Now I'm going to do the same exact thing with my second section with one exception. I'm not going to cut it down. I don't need to because of where that pocket will end up being. So I need to score, because I'm not going to turn it upside down, I'm going to score at 4 inches and at 3.5. But what I do want to do here is decide what piece do I want on my front cover. That's actually kind of cool with the names, and I might leave it like that. But then again, that's really pretty too. So actually I can't really go wrong on this one. I kind of think I like the way that looks next to each other. So I think I'm going to do that. So I'm going to take it, this is going to be my next top piece, section 2 top piece, and I'm going to score it at 4 inches. And I'm going to put it aside, and then the next piece I'm going to score at 3.5 inches. All right. I'm going to do the same thing with the divots. I'm just going to fold this over and score that. Oops, I wanted it to go, oh, I know what, it didn't matter because of, oh, that's right. Duh, Corey, because this gets glued on the inside here, so that won't show anyway. I didn't think that through, but it's not a big deal at all because it's still going to work the way I want it to, and it's still going to look good. It'll just end up looking like that. That's fine because of the way we construct it. So 2 inches or 4 inches, excuse me, because you've got a 2-inch flap, and then 3.5. Do I want that? No, I don't like the big 5. All right, 3.5. So here is my 2-inch flap on the 4-inch score. Put it to the side. And now I'm going to take the one that I scored at 3.5 and do the same thing. I'm going to turn it horizontally on my page. I'm going to mark at 3 and 6 inches for my divots. And I'm going to take out the divots. It just makes the pockets more clear. It's easier to see the pockets and it's easier to access them with the divots. That's why I do that step. And again, because of the way I'm gluing this in, I want to ink it before I glue it. And this is the top, so that's going to be the section that shows. Now I'm going to do the same thing, make sure they're creased. I don't remember if I did this or not, but just in case. And creased. And I'm going to fit the 3.5 and 2.5 inch the 3.5 and the 2.5 inch section right on top of the piece, the first piece that has the 2-inch and 4-inch. I'm going to glue and lay them down just like that. So I'm going to glue the inside, top, and bottom. I hope this one's more clear. I apologize for the last one. I didn't realize it was confusing because I was kind of thinking it through and talking it through and realized that my directions were not nearly as clear as they could have and should have been. And I'll probably be the same way on this one as I think through it. But I'm going to my 4-inch piece is going to be sandwiched between the 3.5 and the 2.5 inch sections. And I'm going to do the same thing. I'm going to use my clamps because this is dry now. You don't have to clamp it. I just like to because I make sure it's tapped down into it because I want this bottom edge of the paper to be straight. I'll just clamp it down and give the glue a minute to dry. You could certainly just hold it. You don't have to clamp it. Okay, and then this is going to be, I need a loose glue there. This is going to be my front top cover. So I'm going to ink this real quick. It's easier to do when it's not assembled. So I'll ink that. Now I'm going to assume my second piece is dry or mostly dry. It shouldn't take too terribly long. I've been trying the Bearly Art Glue to see, Bearly There Glue, Bearly Art Glue, something like that, to see how different it is. All right, I've got section 1 and section 2. And I'm going to take section 2, they're laying the same exact way, and I'm just going to tuck it into section 1. That's it. Tuck it into section 1. And I am going to glue it together right here and here. Now, when I fold these over, you can see they match up pretty closely. Sometimes they do, sometimes they don't. You can choose to trim a little piece off and have it recessed like I did here, or over like I did here, or you can choose to trim off a little bit on the inside. You just want to do it before you glue it, which is why I'm mentioning it now. You can see here, I had it recessed just a little bit. It dropped down just a little bit on the inside so you can access this pocket. So if you want to trim it, you're going to trim it now before you glue it, before you glue these two pieces together. And I am going to take a small divot out of this simply so that you know this is a pocket. These two match up pretty well, and I want to make it clear that this is a pocket. So on the piece that's going, this was section number 1, section number 2. On section number 2, I'm going to take a small divot out of the 2-inch flap pocket. The 2-inch flap fold over, I should say. Just like that. So this is my 2-inch fold over. I just took a little itty bitty divot out. And again, I'm going to ink that simply because it's easier to do it beforehand before you glue it. All right, insert, our section 2 is going to be combined with section 1 just like this. So I'm going to put a little bit of glue at the top and the bottom. And honestly, a thicker glue is a little easier for this, simply because, so like your art glitter glue or PVA glue, simply because it dries faster. That's it. So if you want wiggle room, then this is a great glue. But if you want it to dry super quick and you're impatient like I am, then the other glues might work a little better. They all work essentially the same. I've tried them all, I've played with them all, and I don't see huge differences. The Bearly Art is a little wetter, so you have a little more wiggle room. Same with the Reptile. I don't know if I were to rank them in order of wetness. I think the Bearly Art glue, I'm going to grab it. I don't have my PVA glue up here, but I would say this is a little bit more wet, gives you the most wiggle room. Then this one, it dries a little bit faster than the Bearly Art, I have found. I'm sure the formulas are very, very similar. Maybe it's just the water added that makes the difference. And then the art glitter gives you the least, well, PVA gives you the least amount of wiggle room. PVA's dry time is now. But just, you know, depending on how much wiggle you want. So there you go. Then again, it could be my climate and humidity, and maybe you'll experience different things where you are. All right, so those have been closed, and my folio is now assembled. That is how you do it. I would have chosen a different paper here, but I was talking and not paying as much attention as to what was going where. But I like it, and these all coordinate. All right, now the next step, I've got my folio completed. My next step is to put the pages inside. And here's the cover with your pocket on the cover, on the flap of the cover. Your top cover has a pocket. The inside of your top cover has a pocket. Your back inside cover has a pocket, and your back outside cover has a pocket. And this section where you've got the 4 inches meeting is where you're going to insert your pages. And what I did is I used some stationery and cut it down to just shy of 6 inches, so it was the right height. So it's just shy of 6 inches long. And I'm going to fold this. It's 8.5 by 11 stationery. So now I'll fold it over. You can use anything. You can use your coffee dyed paper, copy paper. Paper can be all mixed up like we do most of the time with our junk journals. It's completely up to you. I just had this and want to use it. I really like it. It's thick. It's a little thicker than I probably would like, but I like the linen texture that it gives. So I'm going to burnish that. And I want this, excuse me, because my inside page is 4 inches wide, I'm going to make this just shy of 4 inches. I'm going to cut it down because I don't want it to stick out the edge. So I'm going to cut it just shy of 4 inches. Make sure it's straight. Make sure it's lined up. There we go. I want to see what I'm cutting. And then I'm going to use, you can use your paper trimmer. You don't have to do this. It's just real thick. So I like to get a clean cut by cutting it in passes. Personal preference. Anything you choose. You can use scissors. Doesn't have to be a craft knife and a cutting board. All right, so I've got my paper cut and I've got my pages folded over as my insert. I'm going to put these right in here. And then what I do, personal preference, you can use a 3-hole pamphlet stitch, you can use a 5-hole pamphlet stitch, you can do what I do and sew with my machine. So I clamp my pages top and bottom to make sure it's in there straight or mostly straight. I put the fold of the creases into the fold of the crease of my book. And I make sure it's fairly snug in there so it's straight. And again, when I clamped it, I moved it, so I'm glad I looked. I'm going to clamp this piece in here. And then I set my sewing machine at a wider stitch. So it's the regular straight line stitch, but I make the stitch as wide as it'll go on my machine. That happens, the number is a 4.5. Sometimes it's a dial, sometimes it's a switch. Mine, it happens to be a number. I push the number up to the widest it'll go, and it beeps at me and says, that's as far as you can go, Cor. And then I'm going to sew straight down that ditch. I have glue on my fingers, sorry about that. Now I make sure my stitch speed is not too fast. And I'll back stitch. And I'll show you in just a second the reasoning for my stitch length. It's not going to be perfect because it never is, but when I sew, but it's close enough, and it works for the sake of this. So I'm going to trim my threads, turn off my machine, push it back, unclamp. And you can see here the length of the stitch allows me to sew it in without worrying about perforating the paper, because the closer your stitches are, it just acts like a perforation line in your book, and it can easily cause your papers to tear. So I'm going to come in now with my bone folder. Now, if you choose to, you can put a piece of washi to hide those stitches. The stitches don't bother me because they're pretty even and they're right on the seam, so they're not super obvious. All right, then your last step, well, I could trim off my excess threads, I suppose. Your last step is to put on your closure. Now, there's a couple ways you can do it, and I probably shouldn't even say that. I should just show you. I used the whale tail punch, and let's see which piece do I want to use. Do I want that blue? No, I don't. I have a bunch of ones that are already done. Do I want that inked? I don't really love that, so I'm not going to use that one. I like the black. I like the black because there's black writing here and black writing here, so I think maybe I'll use the black one. But you can use the same color. You can use different colors. That green one's kind of pretty because of the green in there. No, I like the black one. All right. I've got my whale tail punch. It doesn't have to be a whale tail, certainly. You can use a circle. You can use a tab. You can use anything. It doesn't have to be. You can do it where you're folding it over and you clip it, or you sew it or glue it top and bottom, which will limit your pocket space, right? Depending on what you have where, I don't really want to cover up that word reading, so I can bring my tab down a little bit so I don't cover that word, or I can just glue it on the inside. And if I want to maintain my pocket, I just glue it to one side. See, so I can maintain my pocket all the way up and down. And I think on this particular case, that's what I'm going to do. So I'm going to glue the two pieces together. And then I'm going to glue it to just one side of the pocket, the top side of the pocket. I guess it could be the bottom side, it doesn't really matter. But I'm going to glue it to the top side of the pocket. And I'm going to go in between these two sections that I made, and I'm going to put it right here. I'll hold that till it dries. You can see that's the Bearly Art glue. It kind of seeps a little bit, but it's fine. It dries clear, so it's not a big deal. All right, and then there's my tab. I like it a little bit better when you can see the piece behind it. I think I did that a couple different times, but it honestly, it doesn't matter. It just kind of frames it. Well, here I didn't do it at all, but I put the tab on the top. So you see, you get a different effect depending on how you do it. Here, the tab was on the top again, and I put a bit of lace behind it. Here, again, you can see a little bit of a rim or an edging on it. But bottom line is it all works. It's just a matter of personal preference. But this one allows you, if I had put the tab over both pieces, it would have limited the size of the pocket. Whereas by putting it on this way, I have the full length of the pocket. Like if I were going to put some journaling cards or vocabulary cards or something in there like that. Then, I'm not going to show you this step because it's getting long. I punch a hole with my eyelet. Oh, I guess, no. Punch a hole with my eyelet, put the brad, not the brad quarry, the eyelet. Punch a hole with my eyelet setter. and I put in an eyelet. Now on this one I put it towards the bottom because of where it was positioned and I wanted it to hold. Here I put it in the middle. I honestly don't know that it matters one way or the other. You put your eyelet in, you set your eyelet, and then you put your string through. You can tie it in a bow, you can tie it like I did around, you completely get to pick. But that is the construction. I sure hope that was more clear. I hope it makes it easier for you guys to follow along. Key here is create 2 sections, 2 pieces section 1, 2 pieces section 2, and then combine them, and I think that'll make it a little bit more straightforward. All right, thank you very much for watching. Take care and happy creating.